How's it going, everybody? This is Kurt. Dale's on vacation out in Montana, and I think if I have any idea of what he's doing, it's probably something like this. You know, that might not be it, actually. There's snow on the ground. That's what gives it away. But anyway, Dale's in Montana, and he let me take over for the week. So we're trying out the new home setup. There may be some bumps on the road here and there, but I'm doing my best. It's a work in progress. You got to try it to get it right? So anyway, thanks for joining. We got some news items to cover. A lot happened in Kansas City last week and across the country. We're going to get to it all. And then we're going to have a little interview with an old buddy of mine from Virginia, Mr. Tony Moreno. So stay tuned. He's got a lot of great stories, and we got a lot of news stories to cover as well. So thanks for tuning in. My name's Kurt, and this is Dale Carter's America.
From the heart of flyover country, he's not on the far right, and he's certainly not on the far left. Like you, he's somewhere in the middle. This is Dale Carter's America.
All right, we're back. So once again, trying out some new stuff, trying out the new studio. This is the first time that I've actually used this setup, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, we got a lot of news to cover this week. Another violent week in Kansas City, another violent weekend. We had at least 3 people that were killed over the weekend. We have 2 killed following deadly shootings under a mile apart in Kansas City. There was a third, I believe, if not more, a third that was killed over the weekend in Kansas City. We had that shooting a week or 2 ago outside of the bar in Westport. We have just a couple weeks ago 4 people killed, including 2 juveniles in separate shootings over 3 hours in the Kansas City area. So it's getting wild. It's getting crazy. But what is the mayor up to? You know, the mayor, he's the mayor of Kansas City. He's going to be taking care of everything, right? He's going to be squelching the violent crime. Well, he's not quite doing that, is he? This was from Monday. Cool temps, much needed rain, and the afterglow of Buck O'Neil in the Hall of Fame. I hope your week is starting off as well as Kansas City's. Have a great one. Thanks, Mayor Lucas. Really, ignoring all of the bad stuff that's going on. But what we do know is that Mr. Lucas got an award for Lawmaker of the Year by a national gun violence prevention organization. Can you believe it? So what's that all about? I mean, seriously, I commented on on our Facebook page, and then I sent a comment here over as well on his Facebook page that the award is probably really for appearances on CNN, because he's been on CNN so many freaking times. I think that's probably what they're giving out the award for, not for actually doing anything about violent crime, because we had 3 more killed over the weekend. We had an officer killed in Kansas City last week, which I'll get to here in a second. And, you know, I just real quick went through and looked up the gun crime statistics, violent crime statistics in Kansas City. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Where is it? Here it is. Violent crime comparison. Okay, there you go. Kansas City, 15.6 per 1,000. Missouri, 5.42 per 100,000. National median is 4. So that's 4 times the national average of being victimized by violent crime in Kansas City compared to the national average. Ridiculous. I mean, you can go down here. You can look, for example, murder rate, United States, 0.07, Kansas City, 0.35. That's 5 times the national average. And yet this man is being awarded, given awards by the every town for gun, whatever it's called, Moms Demand Action, all that BS. It's all virtue signaling. It's all nonsense. So what did he actually get the award for? I mean, clearly he hasn't done anything. I mean, he's not locking up criminals as much as he should. He's not increasing mandatory minimums for gun violent crimes, as Dale and I have both suggested. So what did he get the award for? Well, he's been going after gun manufacturers. That's his big cause du jour, is going after gun manufacturers. Now, I will say there is some legitimacy to this. There was, a couple of places. There was one in particular, I think, that they were going after in 2020 when this story was from, that they were selling guns to felons and that kind of stuff. So of course, they need to be shut down. But he's also on this whole train of suing gun manufacturers when they're committed in violent crimes. I mean, the big one being, I think, Bushmaster was sued after either Sandy Hook or Columbine or one of these shootings. I mean, how can you sue the gun manufacturer when someone uses a gun to commit a crime? It'd be like suing a car manufacturer if someone runs over a bunch of people. I mean, it's just nonsensical. The gun is a tool. It's made by the manufacturer to be a tool for whatever purpose the individual sees fit. If they commit a crime with it, if it's not sold to them illegally, then, I mean, it's not on anyone but the individual themselves for committing that violent act. But so there was this was way back in 2020, so I'm not sure, I guess this is an extension of the what he's getting the award for, but it was a Kansas City Star story. So you all know we're not fans of the Kansas City Star here, so we're not going to pull that up. Plus, I'd have to look a bunch of ads and, or pay for a subscription, and I'm not going to do that. So, but so he got an award for Everytown for Gun Safety Support Fund. That's for the lawsuit, but Everytown for Gun Safety is where he got the award from. So we're very proud of him. We're very proud of our mayor. He's really doing great work. All those appearances with Anderson Cooper on CNN are really paying off. So just a round of applause for Quentin Lucas. Round of applause. Thank you. Great stuff. Okay, but all joking aside, we're on track to meet or surpass 2020. I think we're up to 90 now in Kansas City. 2020 was a record-setting year in Kansas City for murders, for gun homicides. And so we're on track to meet or surpass that. So there you go. I mean, there's not much else to say about that aside from whatever he's doing, virtue signaling on CNN and, trying to sue gun manufacturers is not making enough of a difference. So that's that. Now on to sadder news. The day after we recorded our podcast last week, there was a Missouri police officer that was shot and killed during a traffic stop. This was in North Kansas City, just north of the river. Officer Vasquez was his name. That's his picture right there. Daniel Vasquez. Seemed like a great guy. And what happened was he pulled over somebody for expired tags. I think the tags were 2 or 3 years expired. And they got out of the car and started shooting. And the rationale, if you can call it that, is I think that they were concerned that they were going to go to prison for the expired tags. And so the only solution, apparently, is to shoot cops. And so that's what he did. And unfortunately, this officer Vasquez was killed. They had a memorial. Everyone is reaching out in support. I know that Dale was up at, I believe, Dairy Queen up in the Northland, and he was right across from the North Kansas City Police Department. They had a little memorial out there for him and things like that. But in addition to that, there is a way that you can support financially for Officer Vasquez, his family. And that's right here. So we posted this on the Facebook page. If you haven't seen the post on our Facebook page, we can repost it, or I can post a link in the description. But this is where you can donate. So please do that if you haven't already. This goes straight to his family. It's through the Fraternal Order Police. So I think that that's a pretty trustworthy source for giving them your money so that his family can be supported. It's just terrible. I mean, it's just terrible, terrible news. And, you have to think, of course, the first thing that you think of is like, why? Why did this happen? What's the cause? Why does a guy think that it's okay to just get out of his car and start shooting at cops? And there could be many reasons for that. I mean, the guy could be crazy. He could have had other charges on that he was going to get taken down for. I really don't know all that, but if I were to speculate, my mind immediately goes to the narrative about police in our country, and I have my own questions about police as well, which we'll get to later. But we certainly respect the police. We love the police on Dale Carter's America. We support the police, broadly speaking. And, you have this whole movement out there that the police are evil. They're racist. They're going to kill you. They're going to do all of this. So, I mean, if you follow that logic, it would only make sense for somebody, and this has happened many times, where people are aggressive right out of the gate towards the police because they see the narrative that's spun by the media and they think, well, if I don't shoot them, they're going to shoot me, or I'm going to go to jail. So the only way for me to get out of it is to shoot at the cops. And it's very unfortunate. We really have gone away from respect for authority and respect for the police in our country and certainly in our city, as we can see by this most recent example. So we pray for Officer Vasquez and his family, and please go and support them. But similar to that, we talked recently about Uvalde and all of the cops that did nothing in Uvalde while children were killed. And thankfully, we have very intelligent leadership here in this country, including Mr. Al Gore, the inventor of the internet himself. And he has something to tell us about the cops in Uvalde and those who have questions about climate change. Let's check it out.
Can succeed. The rest of us need to step up.
I think I had the audio off. Let's try that one more time. Here we go. Boom.
Abraham Lincoln once said, with public sentiment, everything is possible. Without it, nothing can succeed. The rest of us need to step up. The climate deniers are really in some ways similar to all of those almost 400 law enforcement officers in Uvalde, Texas, who were waiting outside an unlocked door while the children were being massacred. They heard the screams, they heard the gunshots, and nobody stepped forward. Confronted with this global emergency, what we're doing with our inaction and failing to walk through the door and stop the killing is not typical of what we are capable of as human beings. We do have the solutions, and I think these extreme events that are getting steadily worse and more severe are really beginning to change minds. We have to have unity as a nation to come together and stop making this a political football. It shouldn't be a partisan issue.
Oh, yeah. Let's not make it political, but those who don't agree with me are like cops that let kids die. Huh? Let's not make it political, but if you don't agree with my policy proposals on climate change, then you want old people to die. They've literally said that. You want old people to die. You don't care about the climate. All these people are going to be displaced unless we, America, raise the cost of our energy, unless we, America, outlaw and ban fracking and natural gas and offshore drilling for our own oil instead of getting it from places that produce it way dirtier and hate us. If you don't agree with that, then you're just like the people, the police officers who didn't act to prevent kids from being killed. There you have it. There you have it. That's how they feel about you, and that's what we're dealing with. Just absolutely ridiculous. But of course, these are not serious people. Al Gore is not a serious person, so do we take him seriously? I mean, we take him seriously in that he has power and he has influence, but he's not a serious person. So there you have it. Okay, moving on. I got my notes right here, so that's why I'm looking down, Like I said, this is the first time we're trying it out. We're seeing how it goes. So Trump was gave a big speech over the weekend at Turning Point USA. And I have some highlights from the speech that I'm going to play. And then I want to comment on that a little bit. So let's, watch this speech. And everyone's talking about, is Trump going to run? Is Trump going to run? Is it Trump or DeSantis? What's going on? And I think Trump has made it pretty clear at this point. But if he can't make it any clearer, here you go.
The very same people who perpetrated the lies that I was an agent of Russia. Think of me as an agent. I'm a rich guy. I don't need whatever the hell it's... I'm going to be an agent of Russia. I love our country. That's why I did this. Everything this corrupt establishment is doing to me is all about preserving their power and control over the American people. They're sick. They want to damage me in any form so I can no longer represent you. Obviously, they want me not to be the candidate because they never talk
Get
about
that crap out
else.
of here.
You
Whatever.
have people that look at this Liz Cheney. Is she unhinged? Let's use the word unhinged, a horrible word that they like
Liz
to
Cheney.
use a lot of times.
She's just the worst,
The
isn't
other
she,
day.
folks? She's so
By
bad.
the way, I think she's 35 points down. The great state of Wyoming is great. They get her. They've understood her for a long time. Getting more votes than any sitting president in the history of our country by far. And now we may just have to do it again. Now, he was talking about Roe v. Wade, most consequential precedent. I said...
So you can see he's hyping himself up big time.
We also
He's
had a
ready.
great decision
He's ready to
on
go.
guns. We had a great decision on religious liberty, and we had a great decision on the environment, which they want to destroy our country with. We need to implement strict prohibitions on teaching inappropriate racial.
Okay, you got the idea. But he goes on, I watched maybe 30 minutes of it. I didn't know it was happening. It just came up on my Facebook or something like that. But, everything he said there is just totally accurate. And one thing that you can't help but notice is just look at the energy that he has on stage. Go watch his speeches. As far back as 2016, 2015, or more recently, like over the weekend. He is still full of energy. He is charismatic. He's ready to rock. He's ready to go. Joe Biden has dementia. He has no idea where he is at any time. He's the exact opposite. He's totally without energy, and he proves that every day. So, that brings up the whole Trump versus DeSantis thing, and it's very interesting to me because I like them both. Honestly, is my answer. I like Trump. I thought he was a great president. I love his energy. The thing that I like maybe the most about Trump, aside from his conservative policy record, is he's a stand-up comedian. He is hilarious, and he has an energy on stage that is very it's very motivational to people. He's like, they're not coming for me, they're coming for you. It's very true. Everything he says is very true at a core level. It's just like instinctual politics. He's not some DC, policy elite, know-it-all guy. He's just an instinctual politician. He knows what people want to hear, and he knows what to say and what to do. And that's a very rare trait. So I do think that, Trump has some serious viability, and they did a poll at Turning Point. It's of course skewed because, he spoke at Turning Point, but he has like a 60-point lead in the field. It's not even close. So he's very much running in 2024, even though he hasn't officially announced yet. And so it's going to be interesting. I like DeSantis too. DeSantis is like Trump, but a better politician. He's maybe the best governor that we've had in America in 20 plus years. He's phenomenal. But there would be no DeSantis without Trump. DeSantis is picking up the energy that Trump started and running with it. And I think everyone understands that without Trump, there would be no DeSantis, at least in the sense that he has risen to national prominence. And so it's going to be very interesting. I like them both. I just wanted to play that because I thought it was interesting. And, Dale and I talk about it a lot. Dale's much colder on Trump than I am. I would be happy with either one of them, to be honest. I mean, I think I would maybe slightly prefer DeSantis, but Trump still got it, man. He's still got it. And just watching him speak and, just missing him on Twitter. I mean, just the stand-up comedy routine and the nicknames and everything. I mean, what he said about Liz Cheney there. I mean, have you been watching this January 6th committee? Seriously, have you been watching it? It's a freaking joke. And she is the worst. She is the worst. She is like a total traitor to the Republican Party, certainly, and to, the true message of conservatism and patriotism. She's thrown it all under the bus because she gets to go on mainstream media sources and talk about how terrible January 6th is. So she can go screw herself as far as I'm concerned, with all due respect. And so, yeah, he's right about that. And we're excited to see what happens. Speaking of the Republican Party, I had this other clip that I just have to play. Because it's just fantastic. And I talk about on the podcast sometimes that conservatives need to be more courageous, and we need to stop, for lack of a better word, pussyfooting around and, making excuses and playing defense. Oh, no, I'm not racist. Oh, no, I'm not sexist. Don't hate me. Don't hate me. That's just such a losing strategy. And I think we're finally starting to see a new class in Congress. Some, very few. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I think is phenomenal. I mean, not perfect, of course, but she's got great energy. She talks about all the right things. She talks to all the right people. And there's others too. And this clip in particular has been circulating on Twitter, and I just love it. And we're going to play it right now.
Explain
what you said and what you meant by that.
Well, I'm very pro-life, and I make no apology for it. And I'm grateful that Roe has been overturned and that Dobbs is now the jurisprudence on abortion. And I find these people who go out in these pro-abortion, pro-murder rallies odious and just like ugly on the inside and out. And I make no apology for it. I don't believe that every person who disagrees with my perspective on life is an ugly person, but the ones that are out there protesting and marching outside Justice Kavanaugh's home, trying to threaten the court, trying to impose a night of rage on our nation's capital, which is what they advertised, it's just pure ugliness. And I see that ugliness on the inside, I see it on the outside. Even in the horrible circumstance where an abortion may happen, it is nothing to celebrate and it is nothing to cheer.
Mm-hmm. Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?
Yes.
What do you say to people who think that those comments are offensive?
Be offended.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, that is so good. I love it. You know what? Let's watch it again. This is the clip that was kind of going around, this shortened version.
Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?
Yes.
What do you say to people who think that those comments are offensive?
Be offended.
Mm-hmm. Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies...
Okay, we get it. All right. That is just great. I mean, that's Matt Gaetz, congressman. And yeah, it's just like, they are. I mean, it's just the truth. And you can look at all of the footage from these protests. I mean, these are not happy people. And we all know that if you're not happy, you're miserable all the time, you overeat, you indulge, you're just not, it reflects physically. These are not happy people. These are not beautiful people. I'm sorry, but it's just the truth. And I think everyone understands that. I mean, he understands that. And just the reaction to the reporter, right? The reporter is trying to put him in a trap. The reporter says, well, it sounds like you're saying that these are ugly, fat people and like they're wrong about abortion. And he's like, yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying. Oh, man. I just love it. We need more of that. Okay. On to a new topic. So this was something that came out last week that many people talked about, but not everyone was talking about. And this is a brand new study about the quote unquote chemical imbalance theory related to depression. And this was huge. I mean, the theory has been for decades now that depression is caused by chemical imbalance in the brain. And the way to fix that imbalance is through drugs, psychotropic drugs, SSRIs. And we see more and more this trend in the general population, and certainly most troubling with children, where anything wrong, it's like immediately just drugs. And it's not healthy. It's terrible. It's terrible for them. It's terrible for society. It's making money for all of these corrupt people in the quote unquote public health establishment and big pharma and everything else. And it's good to see something finally come out that vindicates those of us who or those people who have been vocal about this, for a very long time. So let's just read through a little bit of this together, shall we? It's study time on Dale Carter's America. That's what we're doing. Okay, scientists find no evidence that depression is caused by chemical imbalance or low serotonin levels. This is huge. I mean, the significance of this study cannot be overstated, honestly. After decades of research, there remains no clear evidence that serotonin levels or serotonin activity are responsible for depression, according to a comprehensive review of prior research led by University College London scientists. The major new umbrella review, an overview of existing meta-analyses and systematic reviews, was published on July 20th, blah, blah, blah. It suggests that depression is not likely caused by a chemical imbalance and calls into question what antidepressant medications do. Okay, so they go through the whole thing. The study basically, and you can look that up on your own. The study basically went through a series of trials where they had people on these SSRIs, and then they had people on controls, like placebo or something like that. And there was no noticeable difference. And you can look back at the history of this, and they've never really shown evidence for this theory of chemical imbalance. And it really brings a lot of things into question. I mean, if you are not questioning the public health establishment and the pharmaceutical industry after the last 2 years, then I don't know what to tell you, because everything that we were told about the vaccine, for example, was not true. That it would stop you from getting it. And I have to be careful because we're on YouTube, that it would stop you from getting it, that it would stop from spreading it, that, and the same thing with the extra shots, the second shot, the third shot, the fourth shot, that there was no side effects. We saw an increase in heart conditions. We saw now clearer results that it affects the menstruation cycles in women. None of that was made public. None of that was made known to us. Why? And the same thing here. There was never any evidence that a chemical imbalance is what leads to depression. And yet it was adopted by the entire public health establishment, by most doctors, and millions of people, like something like 60 million people, something like 1 in 20 children. I don't have the numbers in front of me exactly, but have been prescribed these drugs based on no evidence whatsoever. Why? Think about that. Why? What do you think? Maybe some of this? Huh? Maybe some money? Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's control. Maybe it's, you can speculate all you want, but it's very troublesome, and it's brings up a lot of questions. So I wanted to mention that. And, I have many people in my life currently and previously that have struggled with depression and other conditions. And, I don't pretend to know what that's like, because I have not been diagnosed with that sort of condition, but it brings really the whole diagnosis itself into question. I mean, what and I'm just asking questions here. I mean, I really don't know the answer. Like, what is depression? If it's not a chemical imbalance in the brain, then what is depression? Is it just feeling sad? Because if that's the case, then everyone has depression. Is it having a bad day? Is it losing a loved one? What is depression? That would be the follow-up question to this study. And I'm curious to see if people are going to ask it. So very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. We're moving on. Now on to, speaking of public health and medical crises, the new thing, the new cause du jour. You know what it is. Let's all say it together. 1, 2, 3. Monkeypox. It's here. Monkeypox. Yes, it's monkeypox season. All right. So there's been some interesting stuff that's come out about monkeypox. We know that it is likely a sexually transmitted disease because like 95, 98% of people that have contracted the disease have had homosexual encounters that have led them to get the disease. Just facts. I mean, I'm not making judgment or anything like that. That's just what has come out about the disease. So, maybe we should be talking about that. Maybe we should warn people, hey, listen, if you're going to engage in this behavior, you should probably be careful. Or certainly if you're going to do it, in an irresponsible way, or if you're going to do it in a place where there's been an outbreak or something like that. So in America, we have relatively few cases, but we do have a couple of cases with children. And this is very interesting. And I want you to watch this. And really, the theme of the news segment today is just really think about this. Like, what is actually being said here? Let's check it out. This is Rochelle Walensky. Rochelle Walensky. Say that 5 times fast. Rochelle Walensky. Rochelle Walensky. Rochelle Walensky. Okay, she's the director of the CDC, I believe. Let's check it out.
Estimates that go from very high to very low, so I don't think that we have a stable estimate now to see what those projections will be. What I can tell you is with the scale up of testing, with the scale up of information that we are getting out to providers, we anticipate that there will be more cases before there are less cases. We have seen now 2 cases that have occurred in children. Both of those children are traced back to individuals who come from the men who have sex with men community, the gay men community. And so when we have seen those cases in children, they have generally been what I call adjacent to the community most at risk. I should also mention...
Okay. So did you all hear that? There's 2 cases among children, and we have confirmed that they have come from... What did she say? Let's watch it one more time, because I want to make sure that I'm getting this exactly correct. Let's watch this one more time.
That have occurred in children. Both of those children are traced back to individuals who come from the men who have sex with men community, the gay men.
The men who have sex with men community.
And so when we have seen those cases in children, they have generally been what I call adjacent to the community most at risk.
Okay, so they're adjacent to the men who have sex with men community. Children. Adjacent to the gay community. Gay adjacent. I think that might be the name of this episode, actually. Gay adjacent. It just has a little ring to it, doesn't it? But, okay, so how did they get it then? Were they having sex with adults? Children? Are we talking about pedophiles? Or are we talking about other contact? Like skin-to-skin contact? Like hugging? I mean, how does that work? Because if this is a sexually transmitted disease, which I'm not 100% sure that it is, I don't think that connection has necessarily been made yet. But it, 95, 98%, like I mentioned before, have come from a very specific community. So is there another way to spread it aside from sexual contact? And if not, then how did they get it? We're thinking about. Okay, moving on. I'm not even going to say anything more on that one. We're moving on. Immigration. Okay, so we've had, you guys are familiar with this because we've talked about it on the podcast before. We're going to do this in reverse order. So the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, has been implementing this brilliant policy where, oh, you didn't see that. He's been implementing this brilliant policy where he's taking illegal immigrants that are coming over the border into Texas. He's putting them on buses and he's shipping them to Washington, D.C. and to New York and to other places. Arizona, I believe, is doing the same. This is just a brilliant policy because these people have been going around for years now saying, that it's xenophobic to oppose illegal immigration. They've been saying that America is a nation of immigrants. Diversity is our strength. The more, the merrier. What does that really mean? It means that they're going to get more Democrat votes. They're not taking the illegal immigrants into their own community. Certainly Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Rochelle Walensky, or any of these other people, they're not taking illegal aliens into their houses, into their communities, where they have gates and walls and everything else. So what happens when those illegal aliens, quote unquote migrants, as they call them, from that come through Central America, through Mexico, into Texas, and then are shipped to Washington, D.C. and New York City? What do they have to say about it then? Let's check it out. A lot of video clips today.
The Washington Post reported last week that homeless shelters in D.C. were filling up. And groups are getting overwhelmed by these buses that the governors of Texas and Arizona are sending here full of migrants. How significant is this influx? How many people?
They're migrants, people.
Well, this is a very significant issue. We have for sure called on the federal government to work across state lines to prevent people from really being tricked into getting on buses. We think they're largely asylum seekers who are going to final destinations that are not Washington, D.C. I worked with the White House to make sure that FEMA provided a grant to a local organization that is providing services to folks. But I fear that they're being tricked into nationwide bus trips when their final destinations are places all over the United States of America.
The Washington Post reported last week that homeless...
There you have it. There you have it. Muriel Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C., she doesn't like it when they come to D.C. And she's making up this thing about, they're being tricked into getting on a bus. I mean, what? What does that even mean? Are they being tricked into crossing the border illegally too? Is that where you're going with that? Because I don't think anyone believes that. Okay, what about Mayor Eric Adams of New York City? Let's check out what he had to say.
And we can't have the historical, I believe people should be housed, but just don't house them on my block. Everyone's block is going to be impacted by this. And so we have to add our advocacy with our ability to help our neighbors. And we need everyone on board with this, because as I stated last week, our schools are going to be impacted. Our healthcare system is going to be impacted. Our infrastructure is going to be impacted. But we're willing to do our job, and we're going to do our job, and we're going to need all New Yorkers to be with us on this. And we can't have...
There you have it. Mayor Eric Adams of New York City. He doesn't sound very happy about it, does he? What's the problem, Mayor? What's the problem? America's a nation of immigrants. These people are great. They're just coming here to, for totally legitimate reasons, and that there's nothing that we shouldn't have anything against them being here, right? Diversity is our strength, right? You tell me. Okay. Okay, two more quick stories here, and then we're going to cut to an interview. This episode is going to be long, but oh well. Okay, so now we're switching gears to the abortion debate and the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So we've seen a lot of very interesting things happen after the Supreme Court decision was overturned. We've had, women say that they're not going to sleep with men anymore. We've had companies come out and say that they're going to fund people to travel across state lines to get abortions. And now we have women's health clinics in Austin, Texas that are seeing a surge in sterilization procedures for women. Let's check this out.
Here at Women's Health Domain, a clinic in Austin, Texas,
Good morning, thank you for calling.
Dr. Tyler Handcock says his team has been fielding more calls than ever.
They're asking for permanent sterilization.
So permanent sterilization, tubes removed.
Yes.
All since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, ending the nationwide right to abortion.
They want something permanent because they fear that tomorrow there'll be no other option.
How many were calling before versus after that Supreme Court decision?
1 to 2 a week would be average. The weekend following, there were 200 messages by Sunday night.
Since this is an afternoon.
In fact, he says he's received so many requests asking for permanent sterilization that he and the practice's co-owner, Dr. Amy Chapman, hold weekly group information sessions.
I mean, how many people are in this room?
A little over 20 at a time.
Per session?
Per session. How are you today? Good, how are you?
A decision 27-year-old Brooklyn McNair, who's pregnant with her 4th child, says she's planning to make soon, influenced by the Supreme Court ruling.
I don't want any more. I'll be 27 in October, and I'm just done.
You're done?
I'm done.
So are you for sure that sterilization is something that you want to do or just something you want to learn more about?
I think it's something for sure I want to do.
And she's not alone. Google searches for sterilization procedures surged by as much as 200% after the Supreme Court decision. And membership in some Facebook support groups for women seeking the procedures has nearly doubled, with one group growing by 2,500 members since the rule.
Okay, there you have it. That's enough. So, many thoughts on this. I mean, the first thing that I want to point out is that doctor that is doing all these procedures. He's sitting there like, oh man, you know, this overturning Roe v. Wade thing is so bad, and all these unfortunate, oppressed women have to come to my office to get sterilized. How much money do you think he's making per sterilization? I wonder. I don't know the answer. I'm just wondering, how much money do you think he's making per sterilization? I mean, his office is full now, right? Maybe it wasn't before, but now it is. So business is booming. He's doing great. He's rocking and rolling. So he's not the one losing out here. He's the one who's actually coming out on top, which is kind of ironic because he's a man and because he's sterilizing women. And he's the one that's winning at the end. I feel bad for these women because they're just being brainwashed. I mean, they're being led down this path to think that they're being oppressed in ways that they're not. I mean, you don't want kids, don't have sex, or use a condom, or get on birth control, or any number of other options. I mean, it's very simple. It's very simple. And, but apparently not simple enough. And it's just very interesting to see how the tables, you know, have turned and how everything is like upside down now. How now the peak the peak achievement of feminism is a white male making probably tens of thousands of dollars sterilizing hundreds of women. That's feminism. What a joke. What a joke. Okay. Last thing. And, you know, I'm thinking about actually making this a new segment because it's just too great. If you follow us on Facebook, and make sure you do, please subscribe on Spotify, on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, all that good stuff. Especially now. I mean, you see all this work that I'm putting into this, right? I mean, come on. How could you not? No, but seriously, if you follow us on Facebook, you see that I post a lot of NPR stories. And it's because NPR has gradually and then quickly become the worst media outlet in America, I'm convinced. And they're public funded. They get, it's a small percentage, but they get public taxpayer funding. And they also have, various different rules that only apply to them as far as advertising goes and things like that, because they are publicly funded. So NPR is just terrible, just the worst. So I would like to start a weekly segment called NPR Cringe or NPR Sucks or something like that. I don't know. But let's take a look at this story from NPR. If you can take a guess as to what this story is called, I don't know. I'm not going to give you money because you can't prove it, but I'd be very amazed. Okay, here's the story. How to talk to your kids about abortion. There you go. I mean, just like you can't even get past the headline. Oh, man. Okay, so how do you talk to your kids about abortion? That's a good question. Okay, so it goes through all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. Oh, wait, this is the same one that I saw before. Hold on. We got to find this because there. Here we go. No. Oh, man. Here are some tips. Is this it? Yes, this is the one. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. So they have like these people that come on from that, I guess, submit mail from various places. And they come on and they talk about, they ask these questions. So the 9-year-old's just a little confused as to why people would want to get an abortion. And she doesn't understand what happens once they get it. Where does the baby go? Who takes it? It's a lot of questions that I didn't know how to answer. So that's interesting. I mean, a lot of these, I want it to be age appropriate. I don't want to get into too much detail of what it actually is, but just knowing that she can choose if she wants to have a baby or not. So why would you not want to get into detail? Like, what's wrong with getting into detail? Is it because, again, going back to like the immigration thing, I mean, they eat their own words. So there's nothing wrong with abortion, right? According to them. Abortion is healthcare. Abortion is great. Shout your abortion. So if that's the case, if abortion is healthcare, what needs to be age appropriate about it? Is it because it's killing a baby? Is it because they inject it with, poison or dissolve its bones and then take it out piece by piece? Why would you need to, be careful about talking about abortion? The way that they talk about it, it's just like, clipping your toes. It's like it's like going to the doctor for a sinus infection. They stick the little scope up your nose or in your throat and they're like, yep, that's a sinus infection. And then they give you pills and you go home. We'll talk about sinus infections later with Tony. But so, yeah, I mean, that's what I don't understand. It's very interesting. How do you invite your kids to wrestle with really complicated, painful, not black and white questions in a way that's curious and compassionate without just encouraging them to accept what you think about the issue? I mean, that is fair, right? I mean, you don't want to necessarily impose your view on your kids, but when it comes to killing babies, I mean, I think that's pretty cut and dry, no? We live in a very conservative area. All of my family that we live near is religious, and they definitely have an opposing view to mine on the abortion issue. And I want to hear her learn how to be sensitive when talking about this stuff, if it ever does come up. Okay, I mean, and then they have these doctors and these quote-unquote experts. I mean, don't trust the experts. Don't trust the experts. Don't trust NPR. Don't trust the health establishment. This one is interesting too. One concern is making sure that my 14-year-old son understands how these measures affect people with a uterus, him as a male, and his choices and responsibility for family planning. I mean, the gender ideology has just really taken over everything. It's people with a uterus, not women. People with a uterus. And then even this, him as a male. Very specific language there. Again, the left controls the language, and that's how they win. So that's the little news segment that went a little long. This episode's going to be very long. I apologize in advance, but you're going to want to stick around if you're listening to check out the conversation with my friend Tony Moreno. He and I are old buddies from Virginia. He's a fellow conservative, and he's very courageous in his convictions, I guess you could say. And he's not in any particular position of authority or anything like that, but he has a lot of experience with the school system, having a daughter in high school in Fairfax County, Virginia. And he's very experienced with the mask mandate situation, which you'll hear more about. And he's got a lot to say. So he's a very good friend of mine. And I figured I'd take this opportunity with the episode to chat with Tony about some stuff. And hope you enjoy it. You'll notice, again, this being my first time doing this, was trying to figure out the Skype thing. And it took like 45 minutes for me to figure out before we even started recording. You may hear some audio issues and there may be some cuts and things like that, but the content is there. The content is great. So please stick around and please enjoy my conversation with my friend, Tony Moreno. But before we do that, let us take a second to thank one of our sponsors, the incredible Bob Watson, State Farm agent. There he is. He's local in Blue Springs, certified in Missouri and Kansas. He can help you with all of your needs. You call him. You get a real person. You don't get a gecko. You don't get some random lady named Flo with a hair bump. What are those things called? Hair bump style? I don't know hair. Yeah, he's in Blue Springs. He's Dale's State Farm agent, has been for a couple decades at least. He's been in the business for like over 40 years. He will help you out with everything that you need. You call his office and he'll get someone right on it to help you for you. And he was at our live event, had some swag that he handed out to everyone. It was a great time. So thanks again to Bob Watson for sponsoring the podcast and for coming out to the live event and for supporting what we do and supporting America. You can see his phone number right here, 816-229-7878. That's 816-229-7878 for Bob Watson, State Farm agent. All right, folks. So we're here with a very special guest today. This is not a sitting member of Congress. He's not running for office yet, but this is my good friend Tony from back in Virginia, and he's got a lot of great stories to tell. And so, hey, Tony, how's it going?
Kurt, it's great. How you doing, man? Thanks so much for having me on the show.
It only took us like 45 minutes to figure out the freaking technology. So, yeah. Each time is going to get better, folks. This is a work in progress. It's a work in progress.
I'm very happy to be the test subject.
Yeah.
And nobody was hurt in the testing of these devices.
Yeah. And you just look beautiful. Your hair is just impeccable right now.
You're so sweet, Kurt. Already married.
So, yeah, the reason that I wanted to bring you on is because, you know, you're a fellow conservative. I always tell you that you're very stubborn. You know, you get set in your ways, but that makes for some great stories. So that's why I wanted to talk to you. So you have a daughter in high school in Fairfax County, Virginia. So for those who are listening, you probably heard about Loudoun County, Virginia. There was some things that happened there with the parents, you know, going to school board meetings and protesting about gay stuff, you know, in the schools and everything like that, and the mask mandates. Fairfax County, where I used to live and where you still live, is right next to Loudoun County. So what's going on there?
Well, there's been quite a bit. I mean, there have been a lot of similar incidences in Fairfax County concerning some of the rules that they've made as far as trying to be inclusive towards the LGBTQ community, which has resulted in some very serious safety issues. Some of your listeners may have heard, definitely made national news, a student in Loudoun County who, by merely saying that he identified as a female, was going into the girls' facilities and assaulted a student. And Loudoun County actually covered up the incident and transferred the kid to another school, and he did the same thing again in that school. There have been similar incidences in Fairfax County, not just with bathroom incidences, but female athletes that have been assaulted, and they're actually suing the school system. I believe that is still going on in an Alexandria court right now because the Fairfax County public school system didn't properly report it. They're also being taken to court currently over Title IX issues for female athletics. And there's just a lot of things that are happening. And, you know, it's it's this constant gaslighting issue because people will say, well, that's not happening. And why wouldn't you want people to be inclusive? It's like, you can't have both of those.
It's the that's not happening, but it's also great that it's happening.
Right. And that's the same thing with the CRT stuff. You know, people say CRT is not happening, but why don't you want kids to learn about slavery in America? And it's like, well, we have been learning about that.
I don't know about you, but I never, not 1 second was spent on slavery. Let me tell you, we definitely, we never talk about it ever in society, in school, on TV. I never hear anything about it. So like, where's all the slavery stuff? You know, like, let's go. Well, no, I'm joking, of course, but
you grew up in a northern state, so I don't know what you guys do up there, but we talk about it. And, so, you know, I'm also a product of Fairfax County Public Schools. So I've seen this on multiple perspectives here, not only as a parent, but also as a student. And, you know, it is being taught. Actual accurate history of America is being taught. I think the concern is that CRT is trying to create a situation where if you are a person of color, you are oppressed and you will never succeed. And if you are somebody that's Caucasian or white, then you are an oppressor. And these things are absolute truths, and you cannot escape them no matter what you do, no matter what you say. And that's causing a serious problem, not only for individuals, but for rifts in our society, and it's not healthy.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I've seen it too, as you know, as we've talked about before, with my brief experience teaching, and then with, you know, kids that I know that are in high school, and siblings of people that I know, and friends of mine that have done student teaching in schools. You know, I'll get a text and it's like, hey, I'm student teaching today, and they have the mask on and there's like the Progress Pride flag in the background. I was like, holy shit. So I mean, it's happening everywhere, but like, what do you think is the reason that your specific area of Loudoun County, Fairfax County, like that seemed to really get more national attention than, you know, the other places, like, for example, Missouri? I mean, there's plenty of that kind of stuff happening here too, and it may get covered by some local outlets or by our podcast or whatever. But why do you think that specific area, and specifically like that one story about the kid in the bathroom, you know, and things like that, why do you think that specifically gets so much attention?
I think there's several things that kind of collided together to create, to use a lack of a better term, a perfect storm to create such coverage on some of these issues. You know, Fairfax County has long been touted as one of the shining beacons of public education in our country. One of the schools, specifically TJ Thomas Jefferson, is a academic school where you actually have to apply, and it's a very rigorous process. It's very difficult to get in, and it's considered the very top public school, high school in the entire country. And that school, for example, is getting rid of their merit-based entrance application process because they want to be more inclusive and have more Black students as part of the student body. But what's interesting specifically about that story is the majority of kids that go to TJ are Asian. So it's not even an issue where like people of color are not allowed to go to TJ or being excluded from TJ or are unfairly being put to a more rigorous process to get into TJ. It's that they're creating a situation where you are diminishing the purpose of that school and the ability to say that I went to this really great school and worked really hard to get there, to stay there, to graduate from there. So that was going on in Fairfax County at the same time. You had Fairfax County was one of the last schools to allow students to come back into the classroom. And that was a really huge sticking point with many parents, not just parents that would say that they're conservative, but I mean, across the political spectrum. So that was a really big issue. And this was after you had the teachers unions coming out and saying, we have to have our vaccinations first because we're technically frontline workers, even though they weren't in the classroom. Then they got the vaccinations, and then they still wouldn't allow the kids back in the classroom. When we finally did start allowing kids back in the classroom, it was optional. If people wanted to stay online, that was fine. That's personal choice if they're offering that. But then it was only you could be in the school half the time, so that only at any given time, it was basically like 50-50. About half the kids wanted to stay home, half the kids wanted to be back in school. And of the half the kids that wanted to be in school, only half of them at any given time could be there. So you got 2 days of in-person learning, so it was only 25% of and just the draconian measures that they put the kids through while bringing them back into school. Not only that, but they tried to force vaccinations. I know they were pretty successful at that as far as athletics. You basically could not participate in athletics unless you got vaccinated. They wanted to have kids wearing masks while they were playing sports, which is insane.
In the swimming pool, like doing the breaststroke, just getting waterboarded.
Quite that far. And I think after a time, I know that the outdoor athletics were excused from that. But I know that even last year, my daughter's involved in theater programs at her high school, and they had to wear masks while on stage during their performance, which, I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I saw a lot of that here too with like choirs and stuff. It's like, they're singing the Hallelujah chorus and it's just.
And more than that, I mean, they pretty much destroyed a lot of the arts programs. I mean, there really wasn't any for about a year and a half, and it was really sad. There was, and on top of that, you have the incident that happened in Loudoun, and I think Loudoun County really made a major mistake when they tried to report the father of the girl who was assaulted to DOJ as a terrorist, and they had this. All he did was sign up to speak at a school board meeting, and they had him dragged out by police by merely showing up. And that kind of was like a tipping point, I think. And that incident went viral because of that. And then all these other things started to be exposed. And I think a lot of people were just really fed up. I know that there's, a lot of teachers that were fed up about how they were treated over the pandemic. I teach private music lessons, and some of my students are also students in FCPS, and some of their parents work for FCPS. And there were times when I would get an email as a parent finding out that all of a sudden we're going to have 2 days a week as an option to go back to school, and it's starting tomorrow. And I would talk to a parent who is also, a teacher in the school system, and I would say, "Hey, that's really great." And they would tell me like, "Yeah, we also just found out from the same email, not from a work
right."
So like just the way that Scott Braband, the superintendent, treated the employees, the parents, the students, it was a lot of different things. It wasn't just like one of these small things like, oh, we should have called snow day because this bus happened to go off the road on an ice patch. That was an incident that went viral on Twitter several years ago. And that's something that's easily like, okay, we made a mistake, we can move on. But we have like dozens of incidents all happening at the same time. And on top of that, you have kids that have been home for a year, and parents are seeing what they are learning. And it, in some cases, just disturbing. I would see my own daughter was in her 8th grade honors English class, a class where they didn't read a single book, they didn't write anything, and they were watching a video from ACT TV, which was supposed to be the big response to PragerU. And the video was entitled, "What is Systemic Racism?" And it was something that was not just like bias. I mean, we can all be honest and say Prager University is more of a conservative viewpoint, but it was stating things that were historically inaccurate, that were not even like half truths at best, but things like talking about like redlining, but redlining has been illegal since the 1970s. That was done
But it's the legacy. It's the legacy of redlining. It's the legacy of slavery.
Right.
And
right.
yeah, you're right. I mean, PragerU, I guess you could say, is right wing, but they're not dishonest and they're not divisive. They're not out there to. They're genuinely out there to educate people. And that's like my only criticism of like their videos is like I've been there. Like, it's boring to me now. I want to be entertained because it's just like straight down the line, education. And so, yeah, I mean, that's how it should be if there's a slight bend one way or the other. But to just make things up out of whole cloth, is obviously missing the point. And I think you're right. Hold on. And let's take a quick second to thank our other great sponsor, Funhouse Pizza. Jim Dingman over there at Funhouse Pizza. They have locations in Lee Summit and Blue Springs. And let's check this out real quick because, we've talked about this before, but Funhouse Pizza, they are hiring. They need employees. Look at this, July 23rd. That's 3 days ago. Please apply and start work today. Today, people. So if you've got somebody who's looking for a good job, they could be, in high school, and in between high school and college. They could be an adult. It doesn't matter. He pays well. So make sure that you go check out Funhouse Pizza in Lee Summit and Blue Springs. Go pay them a visit. And if you know someone that's looking for a job, he starts with very good pay. I think it's $13 an hour starting out. Could be wrong about that, but that's what I remember. So please go support Funhouse Pizza. We already know that a few of you have gone to Funhouse Pizza. We've seen on Facebook and all that good stuff. So make sure you go out, support him, support Jim, and support what they're doing over at Funhouse Pizza. And go get yourself a job. Thank you to Funhouse Pizza. Thank you to Jim Dingman for sponsoring and supporting Dale Carter's America. One more quick note here. We had some audio issues with the Skype with Tony. So I kind of cut some of it out, but basically Tony is going to pick up with a story about him getting arrested for not wearing a mask in an urgent care facility in Virginia. So I'll cut right into it. You won't miss any of the story, but it's going to kind of cut in out of nowhere. So that's where we're going with it. But you heard some audio issues there before, but I finally figured it out. So no more audio issues on the podcast if I do this again by myself. I have it figured out, so it's all good now. Thanks for tuning in. Back to Tony.
So end of November, I'm starting to feel like I have a sinus infection. I wake up on Tuesday morning, the day we're supposed to leave, and my sinuses are just like so swollen. It's like hard to like open my eyes. I had a massive sinus problem, and I knew I had a sinus infection. You have a sinus infection, you've had it before, you know what it feels like. So the urgent care opened at 8 o'clock, I think, and I waited for my daughter to wake up and I told her, like, look, I got to go to urgent care. I'm not feeling well. I know we're supposed to leave, but I can't make this drive like this because it's just going to get worse, especially when we get into the mountains. So I go to urgent care. I'm like the second or third person there. There's pretty much nobody there. I walk in.
And this was in Tennessee?
This is in Virginia.
Virginia, okay.
In Virginia, this is Fairfax County. And I walked in, no mask. I've never worn a mask. I don't wear masks. And I walked up to the reception desk. They greeted me. They asked what the issue was. I was like, I have a sinus infection. I just need to see a doctor and get some antibiotics. And they said, no problem. Do you have insurance? I'm like, I don't have insurance. I'm paying out of pocket. And they said, okay, fill out these forms and bring them back. So I go sit down. I fill out these forms. I go back, bring them the forms, talk to them again. They gave me some other forms to fill out, asked me a few questions, and I went back and sat down. Filled out these forms, bring them back. I see a second person at the reception desk. She is the one who took my credit card and charged me $200. It was $200 to see a doctor. And I gave them the additional forms they had given to me. And they say, okay, we'll call you momentarily. Just have a seat. And, please wait. At no point in time did anybody say anything to me about wearing a mask, or my lack of wearing a mask, I should say. So I go and sit down. A few minutes later, they call my name. I walk up, go to the door, which leads back into the patient area. And the nurse asks me where my mask is. And I said, I don't have a mask. She said, can I get you a mask? And I said, no, thank you. And she said, well, you have to wear a mask. And I said, well, actually, I have a medical exemption, which is true. I have
AIDS.
A medical. That's awful, man.
Sorry.
No,
Are we recording right now?
Uh-oh.
By the way, I figured out the problem, so we're good now. I figured out the audio problem. So sorry for everyone watching. Again, this is my first time doing it. Continue.
So I told her I have a medical exemption, which is true. I actually do have a letter signed by my doctor that I have a medical exemption, that I can't wear a mask, and they're welcome to call him if he wants to confirm. And she turns to the other nurses and doctors that happen to be at the nurse station right there, and he says he has a medical exemption. And at this point, all of them went ballistic. I mean, all of them started speaking, or no, I wouldn't say shouting, but speaking pretty excitedly, very loudly, all at the same time. You have to wear a mask. You can't be here. You have to wear a mask. I was like, look, I have a medical exemption. I can show it to you. And I was about to pull it. I had it like saved on a file, easily accessible in my photos on my phone.
It's almost like you saw it coming or something.
Well, I mean, this area got a little wacky with the whole thing. Like, as far as like, you have to wear a mask to go into a restaurant, but you can take it off when you sit down. I mean, there's all kinds.
Well, that was everywhere.
Yeah, it was extraordinarily stupid. But anyway, so they said it doesn't matter. It doesn't. We don't care. I was like, you don't want to know about my medical history? Like, I've never in my life, in the history of going to a doctor, have said, hey, well, actually, I have this condition or this pre-existing thing or this previous experience that may carry weight into this moment or this current condition, and to have a doctor say, it doesn't matter, I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah,
like, that's crazy. That's insane. And like, it doesn't matter, you have to. And I looked at the first nurse and I was like, you're gonna take my vitals? Should I step on the scale? And I got up on the scale, like, and she looked young and pretty new, and she didn't know what to do. So she's
fantastic.
Looking at and I looked at the scale and I was like, it's 175. Like, you gonna write that down or what? He's like, at this point, like, I'm starting to get irritated. I'm not feeling well. My sinuses feel like they're about to explode, and I have many people shouting at me, and I that's just too much, man.
I'm sure I'm sure all of the nurses got on TikTok afterward and did their little TikTok rants. They probably did like a little dance about how pissed off they were on TikTok.
My pictures circulating. Yeah. This horrible individual wouldn't wear a mask.
This fascist.
Yeah, right. So and it was so funny to me because I at this point I'm looking at the nurse who's actually with the form and supposed to be taking my vitals, and she is wearing, stay with me now because this is a lot. She's wearing 2 masks. She's wearing like goggles, little glasses. She's wearing a clear face shield. She's wearing gloves and PPE, right? So
and a diaper.
Knows, man. But like at this point, like if first of all, if the masks work, I'm pretty sure you're safe because you look like you're wearing a hazmat suit.
Right.
Secondly, if the masks are so ineffective that I have to wear a mask, what does it say about what you're doing? Like, what? Like, this is insane. And at this point, I looked at all these other nurses and I was like, look, I have a sinus infection. You have to look into my nose and my mouth.
Right.
What are you going to do when you have to get close and look in my nose and mouth? And they said, well, then you can take your mask down. And I was just like, no, dude, I'm done. So at this point, I asked, where's the exam room? And the other nurses are like, you can't go in there. And I was like, I've paid for this visit. I'm going to see a doctor. And I looked at the younger nurse and I was like, which exam room am I in? And she says, well, it's number 2, but you can't. I'm like, thank you. She's like, but sir, and I felt bad for her because she literally looked like she was stuck between something that she didn't want to be in the middle of. And I walked into exam room 2 and I sat down. And at that point, the woman at reception, who I guess was some sort of authority, manager or head nurse or something, walked in and said, "Excuse me, sir, you have to wear a mask." I'm like, I'm in this room by myself. There's nobody else in here. When the doctor comes into this room, the doctor's going to have to look into my nose and mouth, and they're probably going to be wearing a mask, so I'm not wearing a mask. I have a sinus infection. I don't have COVID. I don't have any COVID symptoms. I want to see a doctor. I have a sinus infection. I need antibiotics.
And the other part too that, I mean, you might mention at some point, but you already paid them. Like, you went in, you paid them.
Yeah.
And they let you in, they let you into the room, and then it became an issue. So they still took your money.
Right. And, this is the thing. I'm convinced that this was a real sneaky way of having power and showing authority and control. They will wait until they have your money, wait until you are seemingly at your most desperate moment, and then just dangle a carrot in front of your face until you bend the knee and comply. And I just was not willing to do that. I can't. Kurt, I know sometimes it's aggravating how stubborn I am, but
we're not going to talk about that.
I just can't do it, man. So he came back, says, "You have to wear a mask." Like, I won't do it. It's like, well, then you have to leave. I was like, I've paid for this visit. I'm going to see a doctor. And she said, if you don't leave or put on a mask, I'm going to call the police. I was like, and I looked at her, I said, do it. Call the police. So she leaves, and another nurse comes back over, and she leans in, doesn't even walk all the way in. She's like leaning in to get the door. She's like, I'm just going to close this since you're not wearing a mask. I said, no, it's patient privacy. That's the law. You have to close the door. Close the door. Right. And so she closes the door, but it's all about the mask. Right. So the police come about like 10 or 15 minutes later, and to the police's credit, to the credit of the police officers who arrived, they were very professional. They are very calm. They were not in any way aggressive or abusive or anything in that sort of. They were totally professional. And the first officer came in and he said, "Hey, man, what's going on?" And I said, "I have a sinus infection. I want to see a doctor." And he said, "Well, they said that you have to wear a mask." And I said, I have a medical exemption. I'm not wearing a mask. They have to look in my nose and mouth, and I'm not wearing a mask. I don't have COVID. I have sinus infection. And he said, "Well, if you don't wear a mask, then you have to leave." I was like, "I'm not leaving. I'm seeing a doctor." He said, "Well, if you don't leave and you won't wear a mask, then I'm going to have to arrest you." And I said, "Well, what would be the charge?" And he said, it'd be trespassing. And I said, "Trespassing?" He said, "Yes, trespassing." I said, "Okay, well, did they tell you that they took my money? Did they tell you that I paid for this visit already? And that they made no mention of my mask or masklessness?" And he said, "Okay, well, I'll be right back." So he leaves. I'm sure he went to go confirm this with them. And he comes back and he says, "All right, well, they said that if you leave the building, they will give you a refund." I was like, "I'm not leaving and then getting my money back, and I'm not leaving anyway. I paid for this visit. I need to see a doctor. I have a sinus infection. I need antibiotics. It'll literally take a doctor 2 minutes to look in my mouth and nose, confirm I have a sinus infection, write a script, and I'm gone. That's it.
Yeah,
we're done."
This could have all been over already.
Way before. It took the cops 10 or 15 minutes to get there. It would have been done in the time that they took them to get there. I would have already been filling a script at the local pharmacy.
Yeah.
And so he said, "Well, they're not going to do that. So you're going to have to wear a mask." I said, "I'm not wearing a mask." He said, "If you don't wear a mask, you're going to have to leave." I said, "I'm not going to leave. And I'm not going to wear a mask." And he said, "If you don't do that, then I'm going to have to arrest you." And I looked this cop dead in the eye and I said, "Well, if I'm going to be sick, I might as well be fucking sick in jail, so fucking arrest me." And he looked, it was like an interesting combination of emotions in his eyes. He looked disappointed, annoyed, and like he just wanted to be somewhere else doing something else.
I bet.
And he just sighed. He just went, "Do you have anything in your pocket that you're going to stab me with?" I was like, "I don't have any weapons, man." And he said, all right, well, stand up and turn around. And I was like, it's cold outside. Can I put on my jacket? He's like, yeah, no problem, man. So I put on my jacket. He puts the cuffs on me and starts escorting me out. At this point, all the doctors and nurses are gone. They're nowhere to be seen, except for two that are like standing off like in the far corner and won't even look at me. Like eyes averted, looking at the ground. Like, I don't know if they were embarrassed and ashamed of what was going on, or there's just no more room to hide. And they didn't want whatever. You know,
the bathroom,
but
the bathroom was full. Everyone squeezed into
right.
the bathroom with their
And
masks and their gloves.
The last thing I said, I looked over at those two medical professionals and I said, so much for the Hippocratic Oath. Happy Thanksgiving. And they walked me out and I got arrested. And after I was arrested, one of the nurses came out with a receipt to show proof of refund. And I was taken to jail. And they, the cops were, they didn't say that anything one way or the other, but it was really clear that they thought that this was a gigantic waste of time. And eventually, after I was booked, I was released on my own recognizance on an unsecured bond, meaning basically you don't have to pay anything unless you don't show up to court. And the next, I got home and we ended up leaving, getting down to Tennessee late that night. By the time we got to Tennessee, and dude, let me tell you, driving through the mountains with a sinus infection is the worst.
I bet.
The worst. And so it was too late to go to urgent care that night by the time we got down there. So the next morning I went to urgent care feeling even worse than I did the day before. Went through the same process. Now this is fantastic because in Tennessee, it was cheaper to go to urgent care than it was in Virginia, but also through the exact same process, nobody said anything to me about a mask. Nobody required it. Nobody cared. Nobody asked, mentioned, nothing. Doctor came in the room, and in literally 2 minutes, he looked at my nose, he looked at my mouth. He's like, yeah, you have a sinus infection for sure. Where do you want to pick up the antibiotics? And that was it. That was it. It was so easy, so fast, and it was done. And by that evening, I was already starting to feel better once I had the antibiotics. And it was just crazy to me how ridiculous one situation was compared to the other, handled completely differently, but really the result would have been the same.
Yeah.
You know, so the charges were dismissed. There was nobody that the prosecution could call for a witness. There was no damage to property. Even my lawyer's like, why did they take your money if they weren't going to see you?
Right.
Like, that's ridiculous. And the thing about it is, if I had walked in and the first thing they said was, sir, you have to put on a mask. And I said, no. And they said, sir, if you don't put on a mask, we're not going to see you. And if you don't leave, we're going to call the police. I would have just left.
Right.
Like, you know what? That sucks. I'm sorry you guys are being such jerks about this. And I can't believe that you're not actually helping somebody that needs medical attention. But fine. But they took my money, Kurt.
Right.
And I could not let it go. And I had so many different instances of this sort of nonsense happening that I was just not, I wasn't going to do it anymore. I wasn't going to put up with this crap. I got so many stories about the mask.
I'm sure.
But that one in particular, I just could not let it go. They took my money.
Yeah.
No.
And I'm glad, you know, that you got out of it. You didn't have to go to prison or anything like that. But and we've talked about this before, obviously. But the thing that's most interesting to me about that whole story is the cops, because you kind of expect it from the nurses, certainly, and from the doctors. I mean, if the past 2 to 3 years has taught us anything, it's that the public health establishment is full of shit and not to be trusted, and politically corrupted. So that's not surprising at all. But, you know, this is why I could not be a cop. It partly is because I'm a pussy and I don't want to, you know, have to fight anybody. But The second reason is because, you know, as a cop, like, where is the line, right? Like, you saw it in his eyes that he knew what he was doing was wrong, and yet he did it anyways, because now it's his job on the line. Now it's not, you know, it's the same thing with the teachers that are DMing you, or with people who, you know, have to go along with whatever at their jobs, except in this situation, it is a law enforcement officer. So, you know, that's very troubling to me, because, you know, we as conservatives are very pro police. You know, we back the blue and everything like that. But at the same time, tyranny is enforced by the law enforcement arm of the government, which is the police. And if the police have a directive that they have to do, you know, whether it be arrest you for not wearing a mask, or close down your business, or seize your assets, or what have you, or come knock on your door, as happened recently. I saw something last week where they came and knocked on someone's door, and they're like, hey, we see that you made these gun purchases.
Oh,
can you bring out what's that?
It was ATF.
Right? Yeah. We see that you made these gun purchases. So if you could just bring out those guns unloaded and show them to us, then, you know, we'll be on our way. No warrant, no you know, cause for being there, nothing. So that is where it gets into this weird quandary, because it's the cops that are gonna come knocking on your door when the rubber hits the road. And thankfully, it could have been much worse in America. I mean, we saw in other countries people get arrested for not wearing masks, where the cops showed up to their house, or get arrested for questioning the public health establishment, and cops show up to their house. So, you know, you could say, yeah, we support the police, and most cops are good cops, and blah blah blah, but which I do believe, but there's still this other issue that comes into play when the public health establishment, or the gun control establishment, or the whatever arm of the government, you know, decides to enforce these rules. It's going to be the cops that do it.
I think that's a great point. And I actually had a couple conversations with not only a police officer, the arresting police officer, but also with some of the deputies at the jail, Fairfax County Jail. But you know, I asked them, I was like, what are you, like, because they all had to wear masks. You had it for a long time. You had to wear a mask in the courthouse. You had to wear a mask in the jail. And, like, they put a mask on me and, like, didn't care that I had a medical exemption. I kept, like, pulling it off. And they're like, can you please stop doing that? I'm like, no, I can't. As a matter of fact, I can't stop taking this off. And they kind of, like, let it slide a little bit, because they, you know, they're in trouble, like, you know, and one of them was like, you know, it's just, we have to do this. These are the rules. Like, you don't have to do this.
Right.
You have a choice. Like, yeah. And I was like, I hear Florida's really nice this time of year.
Right.
You know, it's really nice this time of year. I'm sure that your pay and your benefits are pretty high, because the cost of living here is ridiculous. And I know that Fairfax County is pretty highly compensated as far as law enforcement, and it's a very highly respected order of police. But you don't have to put up with this. And, you know, you see all these cops in New York that are in Chicago and all over the United States that are retiring because they can't actually do their jobs, because the policies of that the politicians have put forth are hamstringing them. But, you know, what about these asinine rules when it came to the masks and vaccinations?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you couldn't stand up for that. You know, and you know, I know that that's difficult, and I know that not everybody's in the same place. I had a similar situation at my daughter's school. On two different occasions. The first time was when they had an open house, and I went there, and I walked all over the school, no mask. Nobody said a word to me, not a single person, except when I went to try to pick up her school schedule, her class schedule. And the person started going through, you know, find her name, and I see it. I saw her name, I saw her schedule, and he just stops, and he looks up at me, and he says, "Where's your mask?" I said, "I don't have a mask." And he says, "You have to wear a mask." I said, "No, I don't." And he took out her schedule and actually tried to put it on the floor behind him as if he was going to keep it from me. I said, "Excuse me, sir, what you're doing is custodial interference. Is against the law. You cannot keep information about my daughter from me, no matter what the reason you think it is. So if you don't give me that schedule, I'm going to call my lawyer." And at that point, he started to have a back and forth discourse with me about the merits of his points and mine. And another teacher went and got an administrator, and the administrator comes over and says, "What seems to be the problem?" And this teacher spoke like she was like a tattletale 4-year-old. Like, he wants his daughter's schedule, but he's not wearing a mask.
Right.
I looked at her. I was like, "How old are you?
Yeah.
Are you a student here? Or are you an adult?" And
that's so
the
true, man.
administrator's
Not to interrupt you, but I see it all the time. Like, I mean, you know, we're obviously exposed to more things now with social media and stuff like that. But I mean, if you go on like libs of TikTok on Twitter, for example, all of these teachers are just infants. They have the brains of infants. And I think that's kind of part of why they're in education too. It's because they see themselves and the children as equals. They expect the kids to be able to handle, you know, adult topics like sex and all that kind of stuff. And then they see themselves as like on their level where they dumb themselves down. They're spending all this, you know, time every day with these kids, and they become children themselves, or they're just fulfilling, you know, their true personality as just stupid children. I see it all the time.
It's so scary, man. And, you know, the administrator is like, you know, "Why don't you come over here and talk to me?" But I was like, "No, let's talk about it right here." And he said, "Well, you're going to hold up the line." I was like, "No, you're holding up the line. Give me my daughter's." And he said, "Well, you can't be on premises without a mask. Like, you're going to have to leave, sir, and then I'll give you her schedule." And I was like, "Well, my daughter's in the school, and I'm not leaving without her." And he said, "Do you know where she is?" And I said, "Actually, I don't. Looks like we're going to have to walk all over the school to find her."
Just open every door slowly. Oh, not in there.
Like more kind of atrium area. So like I just walked around in circles, and he's like, "Do you see her?" And I'm like, "I sure don't." No, I don't. And you know, eventually, like it was time to go, and like I found her, and it was like, all right. And she was wearing a mask, you know, because they've called these poor kids into the idea that they had to. And I said, "Well, she's wearing a mask. So why don't you give the schedule to her?" It's like, "Well, I'll give it to you once we leave." And I was like, you really just are so into your power trip right now, man. So we got outside, and then he wanted to explain himself and talk about the rules. And I snatched that schedule right out of his hand. And "You think I want to listen to what you have to say right now?" It's like, "We're going to have a lot of fun over the next 4 years." And I turned around and walked away. And then the second time was at my daughter's theater performance, and it was with the principal. And the principal said he was going to call the police. I said, "Do it. Call the police." And he said, "I don't want to do it." And I was like, "It sounds like you want to call the police." Call. He's like, "Well, I have to explain to parents and my staff why you're not wearing a mask." I was like, "You can tell them to come talk to me. I'm happy to explain it to them. But I don't need anybody to explain me for me. I'm not wearing a mask." And apparently he tried to get the police, but the police weren't coming. And I actually talked to some parents, and they said, you know, in our area, there's a lot of people that either work for the government contractors, but have clearances. And if you get arrested, whether or not you have charges brought against you, whether or not you get convicted, you will lose your security clearance. You lose your security clearance in this area, you're not going to work again.
Yeah.
Not in the field that you have been, not in the kind of work that you are skilled for. And they said people know that, and they're holding that over your head. And because
of the expectation that the likelihood, you know, that you are some sort of government contractor or work for the government with, you know, the nature of it being so close to DC, they know that they can hold that over your head and then, you know, screw up your future career, basically.
And it goes back to the whole thing I said about the mask and the medical field profession. You know, they're holding the carrot over your head. You're like, you want to be a part of society? You have to do what I tell you to do.
Right.
You know, and you know, Kurt, I've been an independent contractor since I was 18 years old. I make my own way, and I don't have to do anything that anybody doesn't tell me. I know that a lot of people don't have that ability, but if he wanted to go over the edge, I was ready to jump. You know, I was going to grab him and jump with him. You know, and I don't think he was prepared for that. And I think that it unnerved him a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I looked at him and I said, do whatever it is you think you need to do, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Well, that's...
And...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You know, it's okay, man. You know, it was a lot. And so there was a lot of instances like that where I just had enough. And so when it got to the point where somebody actually had the gall, nerve, audacity, and absolute ridiculousness and to call the police, I was ready.
Yeah.
Like, let's do it. Call the police, because I won't wear a mask when you have to look in my ears, nose, and mouth.
Right.
When I'm sitting in a room, a 6x8 room by myself. You know, like how patently upset.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and I think most people in that situation, they would realize it's ridiculous, but people are scared. You know, people are scared to stand up for themselves and to not budge, and that's something that I admire about you. I mean, I think it's, you know, a big reason why I had you on to tell those stories, because, I mean, hopefully COVID is kind of in the rear view mirror now, but just moving forward, I mean, that was a test. That's not the first time that something like this is going to happen. It's certainly not going to be the last. And so people, you know, I think hopefully are going to be more courageous and, you know, not put up with it. And it's going to have to be everyone. It's going to have to be teachers, parents, cops, local politicians, school boards, and, you know, just not putting up with the BS and not taking no for an answer. So, but yeah, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your stories. As always, there will be many more, I'm sure. And that's just a small taste, people. We have some good stories too that, you know, we can't tell on the podcast, but those are for another time.
I'll talk about those. But you know, Kurt, thanks for having me on. I really do love the podcast. I love the show. I listen to you guys a lot. I think you guys do a great job fostering discussion and stuff. I know it's hard to get different points of view sometimes, but I enjoy the show, and it's a real pleasure and honor to be a part of it. So thank you very much for having me on and having me tell stories.
Thank you. Tony Moreno, everyone. Cheers. Okay, hope you liked that conversation with Tony. I know I sure did. He and I can chat for hours and hours and hours. And so, yeah, I mean, I had to kind of cut it off there towards the end, but that was a great conversation. He's a great guy. So thanks to Tony for coming on, and thanks to Dale for, you know, having me involved with this podcast and for giving me the opportunity to contribute, you know, not only with this episode, with him being out of town. I appreciate that he trusts me enough, you know, to allow me to do this. And, but with everything else, you know, he's been great to me, and I really appreciate Dale for everything that he does. He's a legend. So, you know, if you don't support Dale, listen to KFKF and support the podcast, you really should, because Dale's the real deal and he knows what he's doing. But thanks for tuning in. This was a very special episode of Dale Carter's America without Dale. So it's like not Dale Carter's America, I guess. Dale's busy once again. He's in Montana getting chased by bears. And so we certainly hope that he makes it back to Kansas City safe and in one piece, without any limbs missing or any appendages left out there in the mountains of Montana. But until next time, this is Dale Carter's America.
The views expressed on Dale Carter's America are Dale's and Kurt Wheeler's. They do not necessarily reflect the views of KFKF or Steel City Media. Comments can be sent to dalecartersamerica@gmail.com. Check back for weekly episodes. Subscribe, spread the word, and give us a 5-star review. Thanks for being a part of Dale Carter's America.